Welcome to the channel. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to click like and subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Your support helps us create more awesome videos for you. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Enjoy the video. When I was a kid, I had a trick to help me fall asleep quicker. I don't know where the idea came from, but I would imagine something waiting for me in the darkness. A ghost. A presence. Something unseen but undeniably there. I made a rule that it could only exist if I opened my eyes. As long as I kept them shut, I was safe. The false fear worked. I would squeeze my eyes shut so tightly that my mind, desperate to escape the tension, would slip into sleep within minutes. It became a habit, a weird, comforting habit. I even gave it a name, whispered only in the darkness: Nightshade. I pictured Nightshade as a shifting, amorphous blob of shadow, with eyes that only opened when mine did. I drew pictures of it, crude crayon sketches of swirling darkness, hidden away in a shoebox under my bed. Then I grew up. At some point, sleep became easy, natural. I no longer needed tricks or rituals to drift off. My childhood fear faded, buried beneath schoolwork, responsibilities, and the natural passage of time. The shoebox gathered dust. Nightshade forgotten. Until last month. It started with stress-induced insomnia. Work had been relentless. A looming deadline on a project I was leading, constant pressure from my boss, and the gnawing feeling that I was in over my head. I had been consuming more caffeine than usual, fueling the late nights and early mornings. At night, I would lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my thoughts running in endless circles. Replaying conversations, anticipating problems, spiraling into anxieties I couldn't control. And then, out of nowhere, I remembered my old trick. That old silly trick. I closed my eyes. There's something in the room. It's waiting. If you open your eyes, it'll be there. And just like when I was a kid, it worked. An uneasy pressure settled in my chest, but it was familiar, almost nostalgic. My body tensed, my breathing slowed, and soon I drifted off. But minutes after, something happened. I woke up suddenly to a sound, a soft creak. The room was dark, silent. My body was frozen in that half-sleep state, my mind groggy and confused. My brain tried to rationalize the noise, probably the house settling, or the wind outside. This old house inherited from my grandmother was full of strange noises. I closed my eyes again, forcing myself back into the safety of sleep. But then I remembered. I had pretended something was in my room, and now I wasn't sure if I was pretending anymore. I stayed perfectly still. Another creak. Closer this time, a floorboard shifting under weight. I held my breath. It's nothing. Just your imagination. The words felt hollow, unconvincing. Then I heard a slow, deliberate exhale, right next to my bed. A warm breath ghosted over my cheek. My entire body clenched beneath the covers. My fists curled tight, my nails digging into my palms. My instincts screamed at me to move, to look, but I knew better. I had trained for this. If I don't open my eyes, it's not real. The breathing continued. Slow, deep, almost animal. I focused on my own breath, forcing it to stay steady. A shallow, silent rhythm that felt pathetically inadequate against the heavy breaths beside me. My heart pounded so hard I swore the thing beside me could hear it, a frantic drumbeat in the suffocating silence. I wanted to flinch, to pull the blankets over my face, to run, but I knew the rules. My rules. Then something shifted beside me. The bed dipped. It was on the mattress. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. The metallic tang, a sharp, grounding sensation in the midst of the overwhelming terror. It hovered, close enough that I swore I could feel it watching me. Waiting. The air itself felt thick, charged with an unseen energy, and then it leaned in. A whisper of movement. The rustle of fabric, or was it something else? Something less tangible? The sensation of something brushing against the air near my skin. A phantom touch that sent shivers down my spine. I wanted to scream. I wanted to bolt from the bed, throw open the door, and flee into the hallway. But I stayed. I clenched my teeth, locked my muscles in place, and squeezed my eyes shut until my skull ached until black spots danced behind my eyelids. If I don't open my eyes, it's not real. If I don't open my eyes, it's not real. The mantra repeated in my mind, a desperate prayer against the encroaching darkness. I stayed like that until morning. My body locked in a state of rigid terror. I fell asleep. After a few hours that felt like forever, sunlight hit my face, warm and safe. The distant sound of birds chirping reached my ears. Slowly, carefully, I pried my eyes open. The room was empty. I won. I exhaled a shaky breath. My limbs were stiff, my muscles sore from staying so tense for so long. I pushed myself upright, rubbing at my face, willing away the remnants of the nightmare. Then I saw it. An indentation on the bed, right beside me. My stomach lurched. My skin crawled with an icy dread. I reached out hesitantly, pressing my palm to the spot. The mattress was still slightly warm. I jerked my hand back as if burned. The day was a blur of fragmented thoughts and frantic attempts at self-preservation. I called in sick to work, claiming a migraine. The lie felt flimsy, even to my own ears. I paced the house, my senses on high alert. Every creak, every shadow sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. I obsessively checked the bed, running my hands over the sheets, searching for any other sign. A hair, a scent, anything that could prove or disprove what I'd experienced. I found nothing. Lunch break was spent hunched over my laptop, desperately searching for logical explanations. Sleep paralysis, hypnagogic hallucinations, night terrors. The scientific terms offered a fleeting sense of comfort, a framework to understand the experience. But then I stumbled across online forums filled with stories that mirrored my own. Shadowy figures, unexplained noises, a chilling sense of presence. Accounts of people feeling watched, touched, even breathed upon in the dead of night. I slammed the laptop shut, my heart pounding against my ribs. Everything okay? A text message from Sarah, my coworker, blinked on my phone screen. Yeah, fine. I typed back, my fingers trembling. Just a bad headache. The lie tasted like ash in my mouth. I wanted to tell her to confess the terrifying experience, to beg for reassurance, but the words wouldn't form. I was afraid of sounding insane, of being dismissed, of confirming my own growing fear that this was more than just a bad dream, that it was real somehow, impossibly real. Later that evening, as dusk began to paint the sky in shades of purple and gray, I found myself drawn to the attic. The air up there was thick with dust and the scent of aged paper. Boxes were stacked haphazardly, filled with the remnants of my grandmother's life, and further back, my own childhood. I sneezed, the sound echoing loudly in the stillness. Carefully, I picked through the boxes, searching for something, anything. A connection to the past, a clue to the present. Then in a far corner, tucked behind a stack of old photo albums, I saw it. A small, battered shoebox, its lid taped shut. Faded marker on the side read, "Memories, keep safe." My childhood. I pulled the box down, my hands trembling. Dust motes danced in the fading light filtering through the attic window. I ripped off the tape, the sound tearing through the silence. Inside, nestled among old birthday cards and faded photographs, were my drawings. Crude crayon sketches of swirling darkness, of shapeless forms with empty, staring eyes. Nightshade. Seeing them again after all these years sent a shiver down my spine. They were childish, simplistic, yet unsettlingly familiar. I remembered the feeling of creating them, the strange mix of fear and fascination I had felt for my imaginary monster. And then I found a small, folded piece of paper tucked into the corner of the box. I unfolded it carefully. It was a child's handwriting, my own, scrawled in uneven letters. Nightshade lives in the dark. It waits for you to look. It only comes when you call it. Don't call it. A cold dread washed over me. I had forgotten that part. The calling. Had I, in my desperation to sleep, inadvertently called Nightshade back? Night fell with the oppressive weight of a gathering storm. The wind howled outside, rattling the old windows. I tried everything to avoid going to bed. I watched mindless TV until my eyes burned, scrolled through social media until my brain felt numb, even considered reorganizing my spice rack. But the exhaustion was a relentless tide, pulling me under. Finally, I stood in the doorway of my bedroom, staring at the bed as if it were a coiled viper. The lamp was on, casting a harsh, bright light that did little to dispel the shadows lurking in the corners. I could hear my own heartbeat, a frantic drum against my ribs. "Don't do it," a voice inside me pleaded. "Don't use the trick." But the silence was worse. The quiet hum of the house, the occasional creak of the floorboards. These ordinary sounds were amplified, transformed into something menacing. I couldn't bear the thought of lying there, awake, waiting for something. Waiting for the silence to be broken by that breath. With trembling hands, I turned off the lamp and crawled under the covers. I squeezed my eyes shut, the familiar tension building in my chest. There's something in the room. It's waiting. If you open your eyes, it'll be there. The fear came instantly, a cold wave washing over me. But this time, it was different. It wasn't the playful, manufactured fear of my childhood. This was raw, primal terror. This was the fear of something real. I drifted in and out of a fitful sleep, my body rigid, my senses on high alert. Then I heard it again, the creak, closer, the breathing, deeper, slower, a rhythmic rasp that seemed to fill the entire room. I felt a slight pressure on the edge of the mattress, a subtle dip, as if something were testing its weight, considering its next move. A whimper escaped my lips, a sound I instantly regretted. The breathing stopped for a moment, then resumed, heavier, closer, as if savoring my fear, feeding on it. I could feel the air stir near my face, the faintest brush of something against my cheek. I didn't sleep at all that night. As soon as the first rays of dawn filtered through the curtains, I threw off the covers and fled the bedroom. I spent the day in a state of agitated exhaustion, jumping at every sound, my nerves frayed and raw. I tried to distract myself. I went for a long walk. I cooked an elaborate meal. I even tried meditating, anything to quiet the frantic thoughts swirling in my head. But nothing worked. The image of the indentation on the bed, the memory of the breathing, the chilling words from my childhood drawing, they were burned into my mind. As evening approached, I knew I couldn't face another night in my bedroom. I considered sleeping on the couch, but the thought of being anywhere in the house alone filled me with dread. I even briefly considered checking into a hotel, but the idea of explaining my fear to a stranger felt impossible. In desperation, I turned to the internet again, this time searching for hauntings, ghosts, how to get rid of unwanted spirits. I scrolled through pages of dubious advice, burning sage, placing salt lines, reciting incantations. It all seemed ridiculous, superstitious nonsense, but I was desperate. I found a local shop that sold spiritual supplies. It was a small, cluttered store, filled with the scent of incense and the tinkling of wind chimes. I felt a wave of embarrassment as I walked in, but the woman behind the counter, with her calm eyes and gentle smile, didn't seem to judge. I explained my situation, stammering through the details, feeling my face flush with shame. She listened patiently, nodding occasionally. When I finished, she simply said, "Fear is a powerful energy. It can attract things you don't want." She recommended burning white sage, a traditional method for cleansing a space of negative energy. She also gave me a small, smooth stone, a piece of black tourmaline, which she said would help to absorb negative energy and provide protection. That night, I tried to follow her instructions. I lit the sage, the pungent smoke filling my bedroom. I held the tourmaline in my hand, focusing on its cool, smooth surface. I tried to visualize a protective barrier around me, a shield against the darkness. But as soon as I turned off the light and crawled into bed, the fear returned. I squeezed my eyes shut, but this time, I didn't use the trick. I couldn't. The thought of actively inviting the presence, of calling it, was too terrifying. But the silence was worse. The silence was a void, a canvas onto which my fear could paint its most terrifying creations. And then I heard it. Not the breathing, not yet, but a faint scratching sound coming from beneath the bed. The scratching continued, a slow, deliberate sound like nails dragging across wood. It grew louder, more insistent. My heart hammered against my ribs. I pulled the blankets tighter, burying my face in the pillow, and trying to block out the sound. Then a whisper, faint, almost imperceptible, but undeniably there. I couldn't make out the words, but the sound sent a chill down my spine. It was like a voice from the depths of a nightmare, a whisper from the other side. The bed shifted. This time, it wasn't just a slight dip. It was a definite weight, pressing down on the mattress beside me. I could feel the warmth radiating from it, the sense of a presence taking its place. I squeezed my eyes shut tighter, my body trembling uncontrollably. I wanted to scream, to run, but I was paralyzed by fear. The whispering continued, closer now, right next to my ear. I could feel the breath on my cheek, warm and moist. And then I finally made out the words, a chilling murmur that seemed to seep into my very bones. You called me back. The scratching continued, growing into a frantic scrabbling, as if something were desperately trying to claw its way out from under the bed. The whispers were a constant, swirling presence, a chorus of unintelligible murmurs that seemed to press in on my sanity. I could feel the tourmaline stone in my hand, but it offered no comfort, no sense of protection. It was just a cold, smooth rock in the face of this. The bed dipped, heavily. I squeezed my eyes shut, my entire body rigid with terror. The mantra, the rule, the lie, it all crumbled. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that it was real. It had always been real. You remember, a voice hissed close to my ear, a voice that seemed to scrape against my very soul. It wasn't just a voice, it was a multitude of voices, layered and distorted, like echoes from a bottomless pit. You remember the game. You remember the rules. I tried to speak, to deny it, to beg, but my throat was constricted. A single tear escaped my tightly closed eye, tracing a hot path down my cheek. Another voice, colder, more deliberate, cut through the chorus. You invited me in. You gave me a name. You gave me form. A wave of nausea washed over me. I remembered the drawings, the childish scrawls, the forgotten name, Nightshade. I had given it a shape, a presence in my mind. And now, you can't uninvite me, the first voice hissed, laced with a sickening sweetness. You can't unname me. You can't unsee me. The pressure on the bed increased. I felt a cold, clammy touch on my arm, a sensation that was both physical and something more. Something that violated my very being. I started to remember more, fragments of forgotten childhood experiences. Not just the game, but the feeling behind it. The loneliness, the fear of the dark, the desperate need for something, anything, to fill the void. I hadn't just imagined Nightshade, I had needed it. And that need, that yearning, had somehow given it power. We're connected now, a third voice whispered, a voice that sounded eerily like my own, but twisted, corrupted. We always have been. A terrifying thought struck me. Was Nightshade a part of me, a manifestation of my own fears, my own darkness, given life by my belief? Open your eyes, the chorus urged, a seductive, irresistible command. See what you have created. See us. The pressure on my chest became unbearable. I felt like I was suffocating, drowning in the darkness. My resolve, my carefully constructed wall of denial, shattered. I couldn't hold on any longer. I had to see. I opened my eyes. Above me is a swirling vortex of shadow, darker than the room, darker than anything I've ever seen. It has no defined shape, no discernible features, except for 2 points of light, like burning embers, that fix on me with an intensity that steals my breath. The whisper comes again, louder this time, a voice that seems to emanate from the shadows themselves. You called me back, and I brought friends. Then I see them, faces or partial faces in the darkness. Children, adults, all pale, gaunt, and with large black eyes. So many friends. The weight on the bed increases. I can feel the pressure against my body, the sensation of being held down, pinned beneath an invisible force. I try to scream, but no sound comes out. My throat is constricted, my vocal cords paralyzed. The shadowy form leans closer, the burning embers drawing nearer. I can feel its presence enveloping me, suffocating me. Other presences join, cold and hungry. You played the game, the voices rasp. Now, the game plays you. The room begins to spin. The shadows deepen, swirling around me like a vortex, pulling me down, down, down into a bottomless abyss. I see flashes of images, my childhood drawings, the attic, the folded piece of paper with its chilling warning. The faces staring, always staring. And then, I see Nightshade fully. Not the childish drawing, but something far more terrifying. A being of pure darkness, of unimaginable power, its eyes burning with a cold, malevolent light, surrounded by its collected souls. The last thing I feel is a searing pain, a feeling of being ripped apart, of being consumed. And then, there is only darkness. Sarah, my coworker, grew increasingly concerned. I hadn't been to work in days. My phone went straight to voicemail. She tried calling my apartment, but there was no answer. The unsettling feeling she'd had since my last brief text message intensified. Finally, she decided to go to my house. It was a Friday afternoon, the sun already beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the quiet suburban street. She knocked on the door, calling my name, but there was only silence. She tried the handle, and to her surprise, it was unlocked. She stepped inside, calling out my name again, her voice echoing slightly in the stillness. The house felt wrong. Not messy, not obviously disturbed, but empty. Devoid of life, of warmth. A sense of unease, a prickling on the back of her neck, settled over her. She walked through the living room, into the hallway. The air was heavy, stagnant. The door to my bedroom was slightly ajar. She pushed it open slowly, her heart pounding in her chest. The room was dim, the curtains drawn, blocking out most of the remaining daylight. The bed was neatly made, the pillows plumped, the blankets smooth. There was no sign of a struggle, no sign of anything out of the ordinary. Except for one thing. On the bedside table, next to a small, smooth black stone, the tourmaline, she realized with a jolt, was a piece of paper. She picked it up. It was a child's drawing, a crude sketch of swirling darkness with two empty, staring eyes. A primal fear gripped her, a feeling that went beyond rational explanation. Underneath the drawing, in a shaky, uneven handwriting that Sarah barely recognized as my own, were three words: "Don't open yours." Sarah's breath caught in her throat. She didn't understand, but she felt the warning, the desperate plea contained in those words. Her eyes scanned the room again, searching for something, anything that could explain this. Her gaze fell on a shoebox, almost hidden under the bed. She hadn't noticed it before. She hesitated, her hand hovering over it. A powerful instinct told her to leave, to walk away, to pretend she hadn't seen anything. But she couldn't. She had to know. She knelt down and pulled out the box. It was old, dusty, the cardboard faded and worn. She lifted the lid. Inside, she found more drawings, similar to the one on the bedside table, but also old birthday cards, photographs, a life, a childhood, buried in this box. And then she found a small folded piece of paper. It was the same note. Nightshade lives in the dark. It waits for you to look. It only comes when you call it. Don't call it. Sarah's heart was pounding, a terrified rhythm that seemed to fill the room with a life of its own. She stood up, suddenly feeling a chill, as though a cold wind had swept through the closed room. She backed away from the bed, from the shoebox, from the drawing. She needed to leave. As she turned to go, she noticed something else. A faint scratching sound coming from inside the walls. She stopped, listening intently. The scratching grew louder, more insistent, accompanied by a low, murmuring sound like distant voices. Terror seized her. She ran. She fled the house, slamming the door behind her, not looking back. She didn't stop running until she was several blocks away, her lungs burning, her heart racing. Later, Sarah, unable to shake the feeling of dread, started doing some research. She looked up the address of my house online, searching for any information she could find. She discovered that the house had a long and troubled history. It had been built in the late 1800s, and over the years, there had been several reports of unexplained deaths, disappearances, and strange occurrences. Local legends spoke of a shadow presence that haunted the house, a malevolent entity that preyed on the vulnerable. One story in particular caught her attention. It was from the 1920s, about a young girl who lived in the house and claimed to be tormented by a creature she called Nightshade. The girl's parents dismissed her claims as childish fantasies, but the girl eventually disappeared without a trace. Her drawings, found in her room after her disappearance, were eerily similar to the ones Sarah had seen in my bedroom. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. The pieces were starting to fit together, forming a terrifying picture. My childhood trick. The house's history, the drawings, the whispers, it was all connected. That night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She lay in her bed staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. The image of the drawing, the feeling of the house, the chilling words, "Don't open yours," were burned into her memory. Her trick to fall asleep was to count sheep. She shut her eyes. 1 sheep, 2 sheep, 3 sheep. She tossed and turned, her mind unable to find peace. Finally, exhaustion began to claim her. She drifted into a fitful sleep, and then she saw them. Not sheep. Eyes, staring at her from the darkness. Hundreds of them, thousands, all around her. A whisper, faint at first, then growing louder, filled her mind. "You looked." Sarah woke up screaming, her body drenched in sweat, her heart pounding like a drum. The room was dark, silent, but the feeling of being watched, of being surrounded, lingered. She knew, with a certainty that chilled her to the bone, that she had opened something she shouldn't have. And now, Nightshade was coming for her too. The game continues.